I'm Delores Sumner. My maiden name was Tichiwai. It's a common name in Comanche. And I'm a member of the Comanche tribe. I am Special Collections librarian and have been now going on 32 years. Special Collections has always been the five tribes collection plus in-issue history. So it was up to me to bring in other tribes, which I thoroughly enjoyed all these years. So.
Now the first thing we want to ask you is about the Native Warrior exhibition that's now at NSU from the Smithsonian. Can you tell us about the exhibition and why it was brought to NSU?
Well, I have been on the committee for, I don't know, a year or so, and the director, Susan, brought it up about this traveling exhibit. Well, I knew about the code talkers, but I really didn't know about Smithsonian having a traveling code talker exhibit. So applied for it. It took about a year before it came to us because it travels and stays in different areas for a certain length of time. But a little bit before, maybe a week or so, I did my own here in Special Collections on the Comanche code talkers because I realized that I had material at home on the Comanche code talkers. I had the privilege of working for my tribe after my husband died for just a year and a half. But when I was at that time, two of the Comanche code talkers were still living. But at the time, I didn't really know anything about Comanche code talkers. It wasn't out in the open yet. Well, Dick Redout, he's my cousin, one of the code talkers, when I was leaving, gave me a box. And he says, here, you've always been our family historian, so I want you to have this. Actually, I took it home, I brought it here back to Tahlequah and put it up, never even opened it. Well, when the code talkers exhibit, and all of a sudden I said, I have a box at home. And so I brought it and have a display here in Special Collections on just the Comanche code talkers. Because after a while, going over it, I realized 5 of them are my cousins. But I was especially close to Dick and Melvin Permansu.
So my next question, that leads on to my next question. What did you find out about the code talkers from the box and from your cousins?
Yeah.
What do you know that maybe other people don't know? Or what did you find out that you found really interesting about them?
Well, they hardly ever talked about the warriors. They hardly ever didn't even talk about being a code talkers. Actually, maybe they didn't were told not to. But when it came out, see, I was, at the time they were drafted, I was probably 10 years old. But when they came back, and I was already married and we were here in Tahlequah. And when I went home for a year, or a year and a half, Dick Redout and Forrest Casnavoy, 2 of them, were the only ones still living. And actually, it came out that the code talkers, there was quite a bit of publicity, and that's when he gave me this box. And so in there were pictures of all the code talkers, and but of course I opened it, and there were both. Dick he had already passed away, but was just so grateful to him because he would tell me they're not to, I don't know if that's the Indian way or what, but they don't tell stories or get up and tell you all about their war history. But the thing is, he was always a gentle soul. He would say, tell me about one of my cousins who had a non-Indian soldier to help him when they were over in France. And the soldier at one time, the soldier just fell over, and Melvin knew that why, and he had a bullet through his head, the non-Indian soldier, and that bothered him all his life when he came home back to the United States and civilian life. And years later, they say he committed suicide, which is never talked about, but it bothered him so much that the non-Indian took the bullet that probably was meant for him. But I enjoyed, they always say I was awfully nosy, but I said, no, I'm inquisitive. And I would ask questions, but they never really told me stories about their war years, which later everyone told me that's not unusual. They don't talk about it.
Can you tell us, for anyone who doesn't know who the Code Talkers were, what they did during the war? Can you just tell us a little bit about basically what the Code Talkers did and how important they were in the war effort?
Okay, it was during the Second War, and they were recruited or drafted. Drafted, and so. Okay, where I was born and raised, it was my grandpa's band, Chichewai band, was in Cotton County. So everybody was kin to us. Everybody's kin to everybody. And so when they started drafting for the Army, most of them that were the Comanche Code Talkers were kinfolks because they were from our band there. And they were, but at the time, they weren't drafted for Code Talkers, they were just drafted to be in the Army. But along the way, somewhere, I think it was in Fort, in Georgia anyway, I forget the name of the fort, they were there, and since they were fluent in their language, they would talk to one another in their language. So some way, it just caught on that maybe that could be worthwhile. And it did. When they went overseas, that's what they did. I'm sure they had training here, but they become known as, well, at the time, you didn't know that they were Code Talkers. You didn't know that this was going on until afterwards. And if so, they really never told you stories about it. So, but eventually, when it came out that they were Code Talkers, the Comanche tribe did a big celebration, and they still do. They honor them each year. But of course, none of them's living anymore. But still, they have, especially every year in July, there's a Comanche homecoming in Walters, Oklahoma, and so they always honor, and so a lot of the descendants gets up and dance and honor them. So.
How important do you think sharing the stories of the Code Talkers and having exhibitions like this are, especially to new generations? How important do you think having them see the past like this, how does it influence them?
Well, they did great service because they were there where they're fighting in France and Germany. They were there, but they were where they were, I'm assuming, how they couldn't be seen or how they knew how to be somewhere where they weren't in danger. And actually, none of the Code Talkers were wounded or killed. So, however, the Army did this was very good, and they were honored afterwards for their contribution, to the war, how they helped the Army by, seeing, I don't know how to say it, but they were just a great help to the Army. They were part of it. They were a special part of it. But they didn't realize they were a special part until years later. And well, they really didn't talk about, we did this, we did that. No, years later, we found out, there were Comanche code talkers.